The following episode is a holiday bonus replay. This podcast has been made possible by Workday.
Hi, this is Dave DeMond. I'm the CFO of the March of Dimes, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 769.
We went public in April. Simultaneous with that, we acquired a $1 billion software company in Germany at the same time. Most people wouldn't try to do that. We just closed on another $1 billion transaction on January 1st of this year. And the reason we can do that is because of the execution capabilities of the company, but also just the clarity of strategic thought. Very few, if any, of these deals were intermediated by bankers. These were all generally founders that we knew and CEOs that we knew that wanted to be part of the AppLovin programs.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with Herald Chen, CFO of AppLovin. For serial investor and board member Herald Chen, private equity firm KKR could easily be dubbed the mothership of Chen's finance career, a place Chen has routinely left and returned to over a period of 27 years, as the investment house's ecosystem provided Chen the wherewithal to open up new chapters. Along the way, Chen demonstrated a rapport with C-suite members and company boards that distinguished him from other investors, a trait that led to growing numbers of invitations to sit on different company boards. It's a boardroom track record that few of his CFO peers can match, and one that Chen attributes in part to being a good listener. In fact, when CEOs and management teams were difficult to understand, or their vision wasn't being expressed clearly, Chen says he took the time to hear them out, and along the way, discover value that others may have overlooked. Our interview with AppLovin CFO Herald Chen begins after this. In a world that's always changing, one thing never does. Your need to adapt, your need to evolve, your need to grow. That's why we built Workday, a single finance, HR, and planning system that can change as your needs change and evolve as the world evolves. To learn how Workday is helping mid-size organizations embrace the future with confidence, visit us at workday.com. Hello, we're speaking with Herald Chen, CFO of AppLovin. Herald, welcome.
Thanks, Jack, for having me. Really appreciate your time.
So, Herald, we've been looking forward to speaking with you. You have a background very different from most of the people we speak with. I want to mention up front here, and I'm sure you'll fill us in a little bit, but Herald's been chairman of the board for several different companies, including Epicor and BMC Software, and this is all within the last 10 years. So obviously, he's well known among boards. And he has a long career in private equity, of course, as well. He's stepped into the CFO office ever so often. The most recent time was in 2019 when he did so at AppLovin, where he's also the president today. Herald, how do we begin? Can you share with us some of your background here and how you landed in the CFO office?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Maybe going way back, my original intent career-wise was just I love building businesses. I grew up in a very tiny steel town outside of Pittsburgh, and my career goal, because that's what was in town, was to go run that steel mill. I had the good fortune of going to the University of Pennsylvania. They've got something called the M&T program, Management Technology, where you get the chance to actually study engineering and also get a finance degree. So I had a good fundamental grounding in engineering as well as on the number side, which was great. Interestingly, coming out of school, my two job offers was either to go make soap for Procter & Gamble in Baltimore at a manufacturing plant, or go to Wall Street. So as the butterfly effect usually has, I decided to go to Wall Street, and there was a lot of history from there. But the nice thing of going to Wall Street, I really learned about corporate finance, I learned how to gain confidence interacting with C-level people and Fortune 500 companies. And then from there, in 1995, I jumped over to the investing side and went to KKR, where I spent the better of my career mostly on the investing side, but some operating roles. And there I had the front row seat, Jack, to really meet many CEOs, CFOs, invest behind a couple dozen of those. And I learned a lot about what good, the bad, and the ugly looks like in these companies, and gained confidence in my ability to assess these business models, and even more importantly, really to assess the ability of a team to go execute. So that was the grounding that I figured out I wanted to be building businesses. What I also knew very quickly was the fact that I wasn't the smartest, the brightest, or the most charismatic. So maybe taking the CEO seat to do that wasn't the best way to do it. So I decided to do that through investing and sitting on boards and helping CEOs do that. And then every once in a while, jumping from the skybox and getting on the field and actually playing the sport and being CFO, getting beat up a little bit, but being on the field and helping teams succeed, has been super encouraging and super exciting.
Well, that's a nice overview for us. And I'm just curious about your career as a board member, as a chairman of a board. Where did that begin? When was the first time perhaps you became a board member?
Yeah, so I had the good fortune of going into private equity originally in 1995. And the nice thing there was we got to invest, again, behind some amazing businesses, CEOs, CFOs, and got an early chance to go sit on some of these boards and learn from the best and brightest. I also had the opportunity at a young age to jump in to be CEO of a medical device company, actually a board that I was on for many years, that I thought there was changes needed to be made. And then going in and actually being told, well, if you know so much, go run the company. And what I really figured out, Jack, at a young age was building relationships and gaining respect for those who just knew more than I did. I went into that medical device company and I grew the org chart upside down. I showed up that day and said, look, I can't manufacture anything. I can't market anything. I can't sell anything. But what I can do is help strategy, set your agendas, get you assets to be successful, get the problem solved, and go grow the businesses. And so I learned at an early age to go build those relationships, respect the people that really know what's going on, stand on the shoulder of those giants, to build those relationships. And as a board member, again, it's very much an advisory role. We're not there to go drive the revenue, build the products, hire the team. We're there to advise these teams to be successful. And just having the perspective of many different companies, we can bring that perspective into the boardroom and help these CEOs, CFOs, fight the good fight, but really try to enable them to be most successful.
I'm trying to understand something. When you became chairman of these different boards that we've already mentioned, was it because the company was going through a type of transaction and that's the type of role you play? Is it because you're the one who takes command when there's a transformation happening of some kind?
Yeah, that's correct. In the private equity world, in particular at KKR, where I headed up the technology, media, telecom investing, for many years, we would buy control of a business. And before we did that, of course, we had a lot of conversations with the CEOs, CFOs, management teams about where they wanted to take the business. And was there an alignment that what we could do for the business over the next 4, 5, 7, even 10 years to go create value with that team? Could we help them do that? And then my role is as an investor, lead investor in those situations, taking the chairman role, again, was really to provide support to those management teams, to give them the bandwidth, the time to go build their businesses in a way to be successful. And there's so many great CEOs I've had a chance to work with, from Bob Briscoe to Bob Parsons to Alex Sun, in these businesses who, again, are giants, that I stood on the shoulders of to be successful. But my job was to give them the resources, the time, the capital to go build these businesses. And we learned a lot together. We obviously went through some good times, bad times, but at the end of the day, we really created some awesome franchise businesses with these great teams in partnership with them.
Seems to me you could have landed most anywhere in a C-suite. You could have been chief strategy officer. You could have been CEO, or no? Or would you tell me that it would always have to be finance? What would you tell us?
Yeah, Jack, I'm a big believer in the right person for the right role at the right time. And as I mentioned, there was a role where I was CEO of a medical device company that was in a turnaround mode and needed a lot of financial engineering. We got that fixed in a very, very successful exit. There was a time when I wanted to learn to start a company and I wasn't the engineer to do it. So the CEO of Jamcracker to this day, which we started in 1999, is still the CEO. I went as the COO and CFO to help him do that. And then the last decade or so at KKR, my best role was being an investor, because these CEOs and CFOs were much better at doing the job than I would be at doing it. And then AppLovin came along in 2018. I joined the board. We were the first real institutional investor in the business. But when I got to learn about the business model, the team, the technology, the market, and then in particular the CEO, Adam Frugi, who's just extraordinary, it was really this clear opportunity to build a very, very big business. And then the role that was needed, I thought I would be the best person to go help him do that, to really help him bridge, to grow a very, very large business, to execute extremely quickly, to do a lot of M&A, to use some debt to do it, to bridge this gap of entrepreneurship and a startup culture in a very large public company. We are now a newly publicly minted company. That I've seen all that. And it was my opportunity to go, if I wanted to build a business, that was my best role to do so. And there's a big difference too, Jack. I'd say I give a little talk at Stanford Business School about this, where I can sit in the skybox and advise companies all the time. And if you win or lose, you get to hold the trophy, I guess, if you win at the end of the season. But there's a little bit of a different intrinsic reward. If you actually go on the field and you practice two-a-days and you pick one team and football, one offensive line. And if you don't have the right offensive line or the wide receivers, you can be the best quarterback in the world. You don't get it done. But in some ways, winning on the field and being part of that team every day, the intrinsic rewards of winning, I think, are much, much greater intrinsically. So it's been a lot of fun to jump into these operating roles, whether in the medical device company or my own startup. And then for the last 2 years, just a frenetic pace at AppLovin, working with the founder CEO, who I learned from every single day. We've done over 24 acquisitions in the last 2 years. We've gotten public. We've built an amazing board, hired a bunch of amazing people. So it's been a great learning experience, and a lot of fun to be able to contribute.
Let's find out about AppLovin, this company where we know you had many opportunities. Why AppLovin? What does this company do? What are its offerings?
Yeah, AppLovin's a leading marketing and monetization software platform company focused on the mobile app ecosystem. So a space that's actually only 10 years old if you think about it, and just has a tremendous amount of growth. The company also owns a portfolio of mobile apps that provides first-party data to feed the machine learning engine. But very simplistically, it was three things. One is the size of the opportunity. The company was tremendous. And there's some companies I got to invest in that were, niche in size or get to a reasonable scale, but then you'd sell it. This was the opportunity to really build a large platform company. The second was just the technology they had, and the speed with which they developed the technology I had never seen before. And then the combination of those two, along with then the CEO and CTO, who are just fantastic executives, it just said that there was the opportunity, if done right, that we could actually go build a very large platform company. And that just didn't exist all the time. Look, the other side of it, Jack, as I said, I like to build businesses. And at KKR, I had the opportunity to help build this technology, media, telecom business over the past decade. I also felt there, Jack, that maybe there was a couple more years to go there of building it out. But the biggest impact that I could have on that business was already done. And there were some amazing people that work for me that are now running that group and doing extremely well without me. And it was great to see them take that over. And then inside of AppLovin, again, we've moved tremendously quickly, being able to get public, do the acquisitions we've done. I think be on a trajectory to, again, potentially, if we execute well and have a little luck, build a very large platform company. And look, I've learned a tremendous amount along the way too, which is always invigorating.
So just as far as when it comes to M&A, and you used the word, I think, great speed or fast, you did deals rather fast. Relative to what? Tell us how quickly these deals, in what respect, came down.
Yeah, I'd say one of the things that's difficult to describe, let's say to Wall Street investors, for example, is just the AppLovin's unique maniacal approach to prioritization. And that allows us to execute at warp speed internally on internal projects. We will take risk. We will fail fast. But if we find something that works, we will invest heavily and invest very, very quickly. That also manifested itself on the M&A side, where again, we've done over 24 deals in the couple of years that I've been on board. Most companies, would do maybe a handful at most. We went public in April. Simultaneous with that, we acquired a $1 billion software company in Germany at the same time. Most people wouldn't try to do that. We just closed on another $1 billion transaction on January 1st of this year. And the reason we can do that is because of the execution capabilities of the company, but also just the clarity of strategic thought of what we want to do and what we don't do. We don't spend a lot of time chasing deals just to investigate them. Very few, if any, of these deals were intermediated by bankers. And so they were very much one-off conversations. And so when we knew we wanted to do the deal at the right price, these were all generally founders that we knew and CEOs that we knew that wanted to be part of the AppLovin program. So I've done a lot of M&A in my history in building out businesses, but this one certainly has a much faster cadence, at least historically.
Again, I just want to touch on the board once again, just because here you are. You said you had confidence in the CEO. That was a real reason to climb on board. Here you had an opportunity to sort of perhaps architect that C-suite and board relationship in some way. What learnings did you, as you look to, build that communication and that relationship with the board and the C-suite, what would you share with us? What did you get right that perhaps not every CFO is aware of what needs to be done here?
Yeah, maybe two sides of that coin, Jack. One is very much knowing what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. Even before I took the CFO job at AppLovin, I went and hired a chief accounting officer. So before I even started, because I knew that wasn't my background. I've got an atypical, career path to this role. And I found this amazing woman who took Lyft public and, lived with it post-public. And she just had been there and done that, but also understood how to work for a founder, how to work for a high growth business, and then operate in a large scale public company. And I've done that on our legal side, our HR side, throughout our corporate back office. We've found those people. So first of all, building that infrastructure that allowed us to marry this idea of being a high growth startup, although in a very large cap company now, was unique. And then from a board standpoint, we try to find very similar types, people who have been in big companies, but also been entrepreneurs themselves. KKR is the largest investor in the company. And they've got amazing people who used to work for me, and now they're my bosses on my board as directors. We have Asha Sharma, who's the president at Instacart and was previously Facebook on our board. Margot, who is the CEO of Ancestry on our board. Elisa, as Augusto, is the GC. So just a lot of people who have a similar mindset, know how to provide us governance as a public company, allow us to execute at speed. But I think they're confident, again, given the clarity of our strategic mindset of where we want to go. There's generally not a lot of debate because we're pretty clear what we want to do or what we don't want to do. And that's worked well for us.
You mentioned the accounting piece of this. We always like to ask a little bit about your FP&A team. It might be one or two people, or you might have found certain talent in with different backgrounds. We're hearing, data, sort of the marriage of data scientists and financial analysts today. What would you share with us about when it comes to you can rely on your FP&A people to get the job done? Who are they? What do you have in place?
Yeah, we've got an amazing team there as well, and it's someone that actually had worked with my CAO in the past, and that's always a great thing to find. People who are willing to work for people yet again. So he's amazing. We've got a very small team. He's got 2 or 3 people under him. Look, the nice thing with our business, because we're in the digital marketing, performance marketing category, we have real-time data every single day, if not down to the hour. So from a historical standpoint, we've got great visibility. Now, what I always tell my FP&A team, I am not paying them to tell me the weather yesterday, right? The whole point is, tell me where we're going. What does it look like? What's the envelope of outcomes? We want to do M&A. We want to finance the business. We've used a decent amount of debt to do that. Now we have the public equity markets. And so, in a business that's moving so quickly, you need an FP&A team, that can keep up with that. And again, the good thing is this is not a business where you wait 4 weeks later and see what the numbers were the prior quarter and then react and maybe have big initiatives to do performance improvement. Every day we're tweaking the numbers, tweaking the marketing spend, and what we're seeing. So FP&A can be really focused, more on the strategic side. And we've built out that function along with the IR function, the accounting functions, now as a newly public company, building out all the SOX teams. And there, again, I draw the org chart upside down. I'm looking for people who know how to do those functions well, know how to do it in a fast growing public company. And that's served us very well.
Well, we often ask, we like to understand better a CFO's lines of sight. So I've been asking this question, those top of mind metrics, what are they? But I'm more interested in whether you identified something that wasn't being measured or had been ignored by parts of the organization, or some member of the FP&A team came to you and said, we're beginning to be able to measure this, whereas this time last year we had nothing. Now we do. Is there anything like that you could share with us where you're getting deeper insight because you're able to measure with the real-time data things you weren't able to?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're, again, very fortunate in our business. We really have two sides of the business: a software platform that's this marketing software platform, machine learning engine driven, and we've got literally data by the hour. On the other side, we have a $2 billion content business that we're generally spending a lot of money on marketing every single day to figure out how to drive return. And because we're a marketing software company, we've got great insights there. I'd say, where we're very focused in 22 is because we put so many pieces in place over the past 2 years. It's take a breath, assess what we have, how fast are we going to grow, where can we put some more business processes in place to be able to allow us to move faster. We are looking at new initiatives now beyond what we're doing today, and those will require investment and business plans behind them. And again, we've got to put in place some of the SOX compliance, all behind that. I'd say the one area that people always talk about, people being, the most important asset in the business, for sure ours as well. And the fact that they can execute so well and get so many things done. And we've had very little turnover given the success of the business. I'd say that's an area that may not be a pure FP&A function that we want to watch, but we've had, great success recruiting, great success retaining. And we just want to make sure we do that well. I've actually got an open search for a CPO, Chief People Officer, because that's probably one of the most important roles we'll fill, and we've got a lot of opinions on how to do that well. So I'd say it's less, frankly, of a numbers reporting standpoint. I think we've got a good handle there, and frankly, it's more about making sure we've got our talent and people focused on the right things.
Yeah, that's you mentioned Chief People Officer, and often it's the investment banking CFOs, people came over from investment banking or even private equity, you might get a bad rap as far as when it comes to talent, when it comes to culture. They're accustomed to having lightning thinkers around the table. Usually that's the CEO's role to build a culture. But increasingly during COVID, we find finance leaders are really taking a harder look at, okay, we have to make this work and we have to compensate our people fairly, and we have to, there's a lot of values that need to funnel down through the math of paying people. What have you given any thought to how you as a finance leader impacts the talent equation?
Oh, for sure. And look, I think culture from any C-level exec on down, it's important to build it that way. And we do operate, in this real-time mode, a lot of Slack channels, very much a flat organization. We don't even have an executive assistant in the company, right? So everyone's just a player coach getting things done, which sets the tone of the culture. But look, I do think it's extremely important to make sure that you've got buy-in from the team. And from a finance function, I'd say there's two things that we want to make sure that I tell the product teams, the engineering teams, marketing teams. The job of finance and my entire back office function is to build a chassis to allow us to move as fast as they can. Now, I need to put the guide rails in and guardrails in particular as a public company, that they know, well, look, I can't do X, Y, Z just because that's not appropriate as a public company. But anything else that they want to do to move very, very quickly and get things done, I am trying to put as lightweight of processes as possible in place so that there's nothing that we do that impedes them. And actually, we go the other way and say, we're going to help accelerate your ability to go get things done, whether it's hiring people, doing M&A, investing more into some new projects, opening new offices around the globe. We want to help them do that. Look, the other side too, Jack, I'm a big believer in the fact that your compensation does drive culture. right? And so how you compensate, what's important, what you highlight is important. And for us, of course, the equity side, is a meaningful part of compensation. And therefore, as the president and CFO of this company, I've got a pretty big responsibility for shareholder value for investors, but also for employees. So I want to make sure I'm communicating with them. Here's our business plan. Here's why it's going to work. Here's why we have short, medium, long-term, opportunities here. Yes, we've been growing very quickly. Yes, we're executing well. Yes, the markets, at least, still are at all-time highs on a relative basis. I can't control that, but I need to make sure people know that what we're doing internally, gives them comfort that we will be able to drive shareholder value over the long term. And I'd say that's more of a strategic side and compensation-oriented thing of finance, other than just building the chassis that allows them to move very, very quickly.
So we always like to ask what is sort of we call it our signature question. We're looking for a moment of insight, an aha moment that you have experienced along the way during your career that really reveals that, given your lines of sight into these companies that you've been part of or sat on the board of, you were able to see things that others couldn't, opportunities, risks. Is there and again, you can take your own spin on what a finance strategic moment should be. And many of our guests do, so it's not up to me. What comes to mind when we ask for a moment of strategic insight that you've had along the way?
Yeah, I'd say really twofold. One is actually interviewing people, getting to know people, and really understanding what is their motivation behind what they want to do. And I've had the opportunity to invest behind some CEOs, CFOs that people just didn't understand what they wanted to do, and I created a lot of value with them because I just took the little bit of an extra time to hear them through. But look, what I would say in terms of lessons learned on an aha moment was way back in the internet bubble. I'm old enough to be part of that. We started this company called Jamcracker. And the two lessons learned that I've just carried through my whole career was, one, is we did take capital when it was available. And this whole idea of cash is king. And I learned that at Wharton School from Professor Mahoney my senior year. I just think about that in this day and age where, markets are frothy, that boy, cash is king. And then the second is this whole relationship mindset where every employee matters, investors matter, lenders, employees, stakeholders, and be candid with them. Just during the good times and bad times, it was super important during that internet bubble that we had those candid conversations when things were great and when things weren't going great. So when we actually had to restructure the business, we were fortunate to be able to do that. And having those relationships allowed us to get the company to continue to succeed. And 20 years later, the same CEO is still running that business today. But I don't think we would have gotten that done if we had not raised the capital that we did. And then also had we not treated the people in the company as well as the partners and stakeholders in the business the way we did. So I try to carry those through, in relationships today, and whatever size business, that relationships do matter. And they can be super valuable, over the long term.
I continue to be struck by the notion that, here's someone who has stepped into many boardrooms that are high stress situations. This is someone who has dealt with many different boards that knows how to take the temperature down, perhaps in the boardroom, which is and I don't know if that's the question you'd like to answer. It's the one I'd like to ask you, though. How do you take the temperature down in the boardroom? How do you, for someone like yourself, and if I'm mischaracterizing you, please correct me, but you have a comfort level there. And obviously you've been there for some really big decision makings or discussions that needed to take place, difficult ones. And you're able to get through that. I mean, to me, that's people turn to you because obviously you know how to make boards function properly or something. How am I doing? Am I saying anything that resonates with you or any piece of advice? It just seems you know how to make boards operate correctly.
Well, I think if there's alignment up front, that helps a lot. So there's investments I didn't do, right? Because we didn't have alignment of where to go. But I recall, I was early in my career at KKR working for Henry Kravis. We were working on a project and I made a mistake in some of the numbers, like late in a transaction. And, I thought it was a pretty big deal, of course. And oddly enough, you would think that's the point where in Wall Street you get yelled at and have this big blow up. But I remember him exactly just getting more calm. He really got quiet and he said, look, let's figure this out. We'll get through it and get to the other side. And I think that's the approach where just having been there, done that, whether it was high successes and then getting through internet bubble, turning around this medical device company, lots of different boards, thinking through where management teams, because they're on the front lines, will get emotional, get excited, whether on the upside or the downside. And then the role of the board member is really just to set perspective. And look, I remember at the bottom of the financial crisis, I had no idea why we would ever come out of it, ever, right? Or the internet bubble at the top, what was going to blow it up, or the bottom, what was going to ever bring us back. And now we're back to, in a COVID world, markets being incredibly robust yet again, and businesses doing extremely well. And so we know there's cycles. But look, at the end of the day, you can only control what you can control as well. And if you have the right team with the right mindset, with the right focus, you're able to make decisions, practical decisions and realistic decisions along the way that I think you get buy-in, and just being candid, right? So just not trying to set agendas that don't make sense, or just trying to set political, agendas that don't make sense. I really think being candid with management teams of what you want to get done, and even internally as CFO today, like here's our priorities for the year. Here's what I want you to do in this role. I'm not going to bother you necessarily. You're the chief accounting officer. You need to go get that done. You come to me when there's issues and you need help solving problems. But my assumption is you're going to go get those things done. So empowering people, letting them learn, letting them, make mistakes, helping them fix them. I think that's the role for me as a C-level exec as well as a board member.
As your organization's information needs change and evolve, the folks at Workday want you to know there's a single finance, HR, and planning system designed to serve those needs. Learn how Workday is helping mid-size organizations embrace the future with confidence. Visit workday.com. So usually I ask the question about, when you first stepped into the role as CFO, if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice. I'm more interested in asking you maybe, would you have done this sooner? Now that you've been in the role since 2019, would you have done it sooner? Would you like to have been an operator sooner, maybe, now that you think back and as many years as you spent in private equity?
Yeah, good question. And as I said, I give this analogy of being in the skybox or being on the field. Sometimes when it's raining and cold, it's kind of nice to be in the skybox. Being on the field is definitely more work, but a lot more intrinsically rewarding and fun. But look, what I would tell you from a career standpoint, and maybe this is something that I think Steve Jobs talked about in 2005 in his commencement speech, right, was famously, he said, you can't connect the dots going forward. You can only do it going backwards. And I think a lot of people in their careers, especially when I came out of Wharton and whatnot, that people just have this idea of having this linear path of how they want to get to where they want to get to, whether it's CFO or a partner at a private equity firm or whatnot. I just think there's so many experiences that are required to be a good C-level exec, in particular CFO. Because look, as a CFO of a tech company, you not only need to understand the finance and accounting controls, being public, you also need to understand the technology and the business models and be able to interact with the engineering teams and the founders, who want to go take their businesses, in these amazing directions. And so, just having that grounding is important. So just not trying to connect your career necessarily going forward in this linear path, I think is important. Look, also, when you set a linear path, you don't know that you'll run into roadblocks. The number of times in my career, Jack, that I've run into the answer no is a lot. I wanted to go to Goldman out of college and they said no. So the fifth time I interviewed with them, they finally said yes. I wanted to go back to KKR after founding Jamcracker and they said no. 4 years later, I went back and spent over a decade, leading one of their biggest businesses. I wanted to go to Stanford in 1995. They said no, but I got to go in 1997. And so the point is, don't try to line up all the dots, in this distinct row, and you'll be disappointed if you get no's. But go places where you'll learn from people, find amazing people to build relationships, those that are smarter than you. Go build confidence, challenge yourself, and grow. I still feel like I'm growing, and I'll let you know, Jack, when I grow up, what my career path really is.
So, Harold, we always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side. Is there a personal habit that you have that you're known for? This is really outside of work. This might be something a family member would point out to us. it might be part of your daily routine. It might be something you do that people, oh, that's Harold. There he goes. I don't know. Anything come to mind when we ask for a personal habit or part of your daily routine?
Yeah, I would just say too. I'd say I have very few enemies in life. There's a few people along the way where maybe I just didn't get along with them. But I would just say building these long-term relationships. The world's small, life is long. My first CEO I ever met at Goldman was Dick Cashnow. He was CEO of a company called Schuler. To this day, I still send Christmas cards and chat with him, once a quarter. He's obviously gone on to do amazing things in his career. Look, the other thing I would say in general is, I'll just pull on the string a little bit more. And I'm not saying, you need to go, do double the amount of work or get up 5 hours earlier than everybody else. I'm just always amazed if you pull on the string maybe just 10% more than others, just how much more learning you can have and just that little advantage. For example, I was interviewing someone today and I happened to find out they had a podcast. And so I listened to 4 or 5 of their podcasts. And she said, well, no one else did that, that's interviewing me. And it just took a little bit and they were wildly interesting. And I was going to listen to half and I listened to 4, right? So I just think these ideas of, okay, get out of bed 15 minutes early or, spend 15 more minutes of time with that new employee and making sure they understand the culture. Spend 15 minutes more time with the board member after the meeting, getting to know what they're focused on and what their concerns are. So I don't think it's huge effort, but I think just that little incremental amount can go a long way. And I try to do that. I try to teach my kids to do that and just not be. It's not even being about lazy. It's just about taking just a little more initiative around things.
We always like to ask for a book recommendation. Doesn't have to be a business book, but anything come to mind? Anything you'd recommend?
Yeah, well, there's 2 actually. So I guess with New Year's resolutions, I try to pick up a book and get started. We'll see how far that goes. But there's one called Think Again by Adam Grant. He's a Wharton professor. And the idea is to rethink, right? Don't really trust your instincts all the time. And it's always good to check your thinking once in a while. And as someone who's been around the block a lot of time, and I do trust my instincts, I'm really interested to learn more from this book about how to rethink. But look, my favorite book is still Good to Great. I know that's very trite in the business world, but the second chapter about finding the right people at the right time and the right seats, then go is really tremendous. You can't go anywhere, even if you have the best strategy or idea, if you don't have those right people in the right roles. And that does come down to sometimes there could be an awesome CEO, super charismatic and a leader, but actually you need a manager. Or there's a company that needs a new leader and not a manager. And so you need to make sure there's a fit. And that works all the way through the organization. So I'm hoping to get through some new books this year, but I still go back to my favorite Good to Great.
Finally, our final question, we always ask our guests to look forward the next 12 months. What would your priorities as CFO of AppLovin be over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. The business, almost doubled in the third quarter. We quadrupled the software business. So it's been growing at a very rapid rate. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of awesome pieces in the ground for 22. And so as a newly public company, look, we want to make sure we convey that story well to the street. Our story isn't, completely straightforward. It has its nuances, but I think we're getting that story across. And we need to continue to develop the business processes and capabilities to be a good public company. To that end, too, on an external standpoint, we want to continue to build out the blue chip investor base that we think we want to have as long-term investors in our company. We are focused on the long term. Adam and I want to build this thing for a long period of time. We make decisions on that basis as well. That's not for every investor. We give guidance once a year and live with that too, which is relatively unique. But continue to build out the investor base as we go. This year is another high priority.
Herald Chen, who pulls a little harder on the string. Thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for the time.
Hello, listeners. Do us a favor. Be certain to subscribe to CFO Thought Leader on Apple Podcasts, or if you're an Android user, check us out on Spotify or Google Play. If you like the show, please recommend it to a friend.